Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome. It is Wednesday, April 23rd, 2025. This is RambleCast. I'm your host, Cody Toombs, and with me I have Corbin Davenport.
Hello.
So, almost every week I complain that the news just isn't that newsy. It's not that exciting. It's not that interesting. This week oh God, we have topics. We actually have topics. Like, I don't feel bad about I don't feel like we're gonna have to stretch any topics this week. It's kind of neat.
Well, Kirby said she's in a battle with the scalper pots. I didn't realize we were selling tickets to the RambleCast.
Yes,
But
exclusive tickets went on sale.
It makes sense that this one is packed though, because we've got so many topics.
Yep. And those who bought early and bought often will have access to the special after show where the music will continue playing until the end of the track. It's pretty exciting.
Talking about the Switch 2.
Yeah, good luck with the Switch 2. As we discussed earlier in Discord, it was kind of inevitable they weren't going to have enough supply for all of the demand, because literally every major console launch has had this exact problem. I remember when the PS3 was hard to get. I remember when the Wii couldn't sit on a store shelf for more than like an hour for like 6 or 8 months, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Which, weirdly enough, I managed to buy an original Xbox like the week it came out, and I bought a Wii like the second week it was out. Both straight off store shelves. I wasn't trying to get them. I wasn't going to the store with any purpose to get them. I just happened to walk in, look at a store shelf, and notice they have them. Sure, I'll buy it. And that's how I ended up with both of those when they would have been... Honestly, I should have scalped the Wii. The Wii wasn't... I know everyone liked it a lot, but it just wasn't that good to me. It wasn't that interesting. It was okay. It was kind of entertaining for a bit, but it really had that, like, here's a toy, cool, I'm done with the toy, into the drawer you go vibe.
Mm-hmm.
The Xbox did better. Not by a ton, but it did do better. At least once I got Halo, it did better.
Yep, I really like the Wii. Played it a lot when it was new, and I have another Wii back there. Super duper homebrewed. Got all my games now on an external SSD. Pretty cool. I just download GameCube games, which is great because used GameCube game prices are crazy. So I'm definitely downloading ISOs for those.
How dare
Yeah,
you admit to software piracy on this show?
yeah.
You're a
Nintendo should
criminal.
try selling their old games in an accessible format.
Yes.
Just a thought.
Countdown to Nintendo taking down this episode and possibly this whole show. Because
Yeah,
after all,
I'll bring my Wii over and plug it into the HDMI capture, and I'll stream some Mario Galaxy on the next RambleCast.
oh God, you really want us banned. I'm saying that they might come after us just for the admission that someone might be pirating. Oh my God, it's so scary.
Yep.
But hey,
So
speaking of things being canceled, terminated, or otherwise ended for no good reason,
trying shift in time.
Intel's doing a bad thing. Though honestly a predictable thing. So simply put, Intel is going to lay off 20% of its staff which means somewhere to the tune of about 20 to 21,000 employees. This is of course coming just before they hold their quarterly earnings report, or the announcement at least, though the actual act of laying these people off will likely come shortly after the earnings report. None of this is in any way surprising because they have a new CEO. And shockingly, when new CEOs take over, it's really, really common for them to basically just have a cleaning house stage where they pick a bunch of programs that they no longer intend to keep going. They obviously slash a few projects and interests of some of their predecessors, like just pet projects. They look for ways that they can cut costs, largely so that they can open up a budget for some of the projects they'd like to run. So, as some people may remember, Intel got a new CEO, about 2 months ago, Lip Bhutan. He's basically going through some restructuring, and this is one of the many side effects of that.
Yeah, I mean, it sucks. I've said repeatedly, like, I really wish Intel would be good, because I think it would be good to have like a company in the US making good processors. It'd be good to have competition in the CPU and the GPU space and everywhere else. Intel has tried to compete, and they're doing better in some ways, but they're still struggling, especially with their own manufacturing. And obviously it sucks that a lot of more people are going to lose their jobs on top of the mountain of other layoffs. And every time it happens, it makes it that much harder for everyone involved to find another job. Because a lot of those do not come back for months or years, if ever.
Yep.
And it's especially rough that this is happening before the parts of Intel get cut out and sold off, which that would normally be when you lose people, because they would be going to a different a new entity. And then after that, they figure out like, okay, who do we need, or we need to scale up or scale down. But no, this is just another standard, like, we're not doing too good. Let's, I don't know, fire a bunch of people, ruin some lives. Shareholders will appreciate this for a little while.
Yeah.
Sucks.
Yeah, exactly. This is basically just to pump the stock price, which, I mean, look, I don't favor that in any way, shape, or form. I think that's crappy. But at the same time, at this stage, I can't pretend to be surprised by it. This has just become the business as usual sort of situation, which is terrible, but it also just, at this stage, it feels normal. Which we probably shouldn't be to the point where any of this feels normal, but here we are. That being said, the other thing that feels normal about it is they're laying off 20,000-ish people now, or about to. But Intel has had multiple layoffs in just the last, 3 years. They've had so many layoffs that if they kept... And every time they lay people off, it's between 10 and... usually more 10 to 15% of the company, but I think one of them previously was 20 or 21, 22. Anyway, at this stage, they should have almost nobody working there. Yet, the number of jobs that they have currently and the number of people they'll be laying off at this percentage actually lines up pretty well with some of the previous layoffs, which really does speak to the fact that Intel has has laid off a bunch of people, but then they also just hire not necessarily the same number back, but they hire a pretty significant portion of people back within a matter of a few months. So I know that a lot of this is about pumping stock price. The question becomes, are you really just doing it so you can make an announcement that you laid off a bunch of people? Because that honestly feels like what this is now. You lay off a bunch of people, and then I'm not going to say you rehire them, but it sort of seems like that's the only explanation for how they have so many employees.
Yeah, I mean, it's just concerning that they're doing the standard, like, oh, well, we're not doing too good. Okay, 15% get out of here. And then, you know, they're still going through their business and trying to see what can they sell off. And if there's something that's weighing them down and they can't sell it off, then that entire segment probably gets shut down and everyone working there gets laid off. So there's probably going to be more of these from Intel in the near future.
Well, at this stage, I think it's just a given that there's pretty much always going to be a cycle of this. Like I said, it seems like they're just laying people off so that they can get the boost in stock price, and then hiring either replacements or just honestly rehiring the same people. Not really sure which it is at this stage, but it kind of seems obvious that it's at least a bit of both.
Right, there's all the issues with Intel, and then on top of that, there's also like the whole like global economy thing not going so hot, which will just cause a lot of job losses everywhere. We'll have another recession. That's fun.
Oh, come on. We're not going to have just a recession. We're headed for a proper depression.
Yeah, we're heading towards the balkanization of the United States. So, ready to enlist for the new Confederacy next year.
Leave it to a Georgian to be so eager.
Yeah. I just figure we're going to bring back the classics. That's usually how this works.
Yeah. It really wouldn't be that surprising.
Speaking of countries.
Yes.
The EU, which is not a country, but is in fact a group of countries.
Well, you started by saying countries plural, so
sure.
Yeah, we'll count it.
The European Commission has fined Apple and Meta for violating the Digital Markets Act, which is this is the law that passed, I want to say, 2 years ago, that basically defined what are the quote-unquote gatekeepers of the tech industry. And if a company is determined to be a gatekeeper, then it is subject to additional regulations. And this is why Apple had to open up the App Store for the iPhone in Europe. Google had to make some changes to Android. Windows 11 had to stop making everyone use Edge all the time. Generally pretty good stuff that we will not get over here. Maybe ever. This time it was just, what did they get violated for? So it was imposed on Meta over its paid for privacy system, which means users have to pay to avoid data collection. Okay, so that's the thing where they were like, pay us so you don't see ads.
Well, you still saw the ads, if I understand correctly. It's just they weren't targeted ads, and there were fewer of them. So, as I understand it, it was more like a Hulu situation, where you would just get fewer. You'd still get them, you just didn't see as many ads.
Yeah, and then what did Apple do? I mean, what did Apple do is just kind of like they're doing everything.
Yeah, it's the ever true statement. Anyway, they breached the anti-steering obligation So basically, this was the policy that would have prevented people, or would have prevented developers from directing people to get apps or make purchases outside of the App Store. So fundamentally, this is more about the apps. So basically, like if you were to, let's say, download an app in the App Store and it said, oh, you could have a better version of our app, or you could have one that does this or works this other way, if you just went and downloaded it from somewhere else, that's a thing that some developers obviously wanted to do, and Apple was going out of its way to prevent people from going elsewhere. And this applied to a lot of things. I'm describing it a little narrowly, but for example, if you wanted to tell people, oh, you could go subscribe to our service outside of the App Store, like let's say your Dropbox or Netflix. Well, Netflix is a bad example, but you get the point. Basically, if you said you could get it cheaper, or just simply you could go to this other place and get a service that we won't offer you through the App Store, if you do that stuff, Apple would punish you for it. So yeah, the EU is punishing Apple for being so punishing.
Yeah, and again, every time we've talked about this, like, Apple could just tone it down, like 10%, like open up just a little bit, but they keep being so hyper aggressive to the point where developers hate them, users are increasingly annoyed at them, even if they don't know it, right? Because that's kind of the point of this, is like, you're not allowed to know that you could get Spotify for cheaper or whatever if you go to their website, because Spotify doesn't want to pass on the fees to you. So yeah, it's gonna keep happening. And you know, one thing also I have been thinking about Europe, and I'd love to write an article about this if I can make it a coherent statement, which is that with the ongoing trade wars, I've seen a lot more discussions about moving away from U.S. tech, or just, you know, U.S. products in general, right? It's happening in Canada too. And I do think it'd be interesting if the result of all of this, mostly the trade war stuff, I don't think like the point of the EU, like the Digital Markets Act, was never to like block Apple out of the country, but 15% tariffs or whatever would do that. And you know, the US weaponizing all of the tech resources it has. So I do wonder if over the next few years we're going to get more of a rise of EU alternatives to dominant US services. Like, to my knowledge, there's not really a you know, Europe alternative to like Google, like the Google Workspace, or like Microsoft 365, right? That's the other one. I know Zoom has one, but I think Zoom is US.
It is.
I have seen people bring up Proton, because Proton has been trying to build its own alternative like suite of services for a while, and they do have a mail service and like cloud storage and stuff, and they do sell that to companies, but that's still like, you know, pretty different. All that stuff's very early. So I do wonder if there's going to be more movement in that direction. And obviously, you know, I'm assuming, oh, there's a bug in front of my computer. I'm assuming some of that would be accessible in the US too, so maybe we'll benefit. It's like, oh look, another, you know, alternative to Gmail just showed up. Maybe I can try this out. But that feels like it's something that you should be doing. It should be investing in that. I know they are to an extent, but they should probably do that a lot more. And I did see one post on Mastodon a little while ago where someone was like, I need a new laptop, but is there something not from the US or China. And I think the only one was like Asus because they're Taiwan. And I couldn't think of anything that isn't like designed or manufactured by US or China. Because like really all the like smaller brands are like, white label manufactured in China or a country like that.
I mean, if you're trying to avoid quote unquote manufactured in China, and and you admit that Taiwan is kind of a complicated and somewhat gray area on this. Believe me, I'm not taking China's side here, just acknowledging some amount of reality. The thing is, I'm not sure that you really escape, or I'm not sure that there really is any sort of escape from that right now. It really is definitely it's difficult to find any options in that space. That being said,
if you
Samsung is probably the closest.
That's true. Yeah, I forgot they make laptops.
Yeah, I think a lot of people do, which is weird. But and while it's not a company that I would normally necessarily suggest,
LG also exists.
Yes, and I was also going to say Sony, because at least Japanese company. I'm sure.
Does Sony make computers anymore?
Actually, I guess I don't know. I thought they did. That's a good question.
I know they sold off like the Vio laptops a long time ago. There is a Vio website, but who owns this?
Okay, yeah, I'm not seeing any sign of computers.
Sony
on their
spun off
website.
Vio as an independent company, while Sony maintained a minority stake.
Okay, well, so Sony technically owns it then.
Yeah, it's probably still. Still supposedly based in China and Japan. It's not China. I meant to say Japan.
And I have no idea where Sony's manufacturing occurs, so that's, whatever. But yeah,
but
so
I think hardware is definitely hard to get away from, but it does feel like a alternative to some of the like main infrastructure services should happen. Like, I'm sure there's a lot of big companies in Europe right now. They're like, do we want all of our corporate data at a Google data center right now? That might be an issue at some point.
Yeah, well, honestly, speaking as somebody who has had to make at least a few decisions in the past about basically IT decisions and figuring out where do we want to place risk in the things that we have operating. Right now I would look at the US as a pretty risky thing that needs, like, I certainly wouldn't want to place all of my risk on US based things right now. And I would at least be coming up with contingency plans, if not outright just ceasing all relationships. And I don't like saying that. I think it sucks to have to say that, but this is part of what our country was good at for many years. Is, I wouldn't say that we were a provider of stability per se, but I would say that our relatively free market approach to a lot of things ensured that as long as a company was not doing something wildly illegal, it probably would remain accessible and probably do so relatively independently. which that last part I have to add because it's sort of what shuts out China in many cases. So yeah, this is bad. That being said,
Yeah, I mean, especially since we were just talking about like Intel layoffs, and there's going to be more layoffs, and the more business that is removed from the U.S. speeds that up. So that's not fun either.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Of course, you can make the argument that a lot of those would happen anyway because like Intel's doing now. It's like we're just gonna like a number of people off that feels right.
well, yes,
It's
that
just vibes.
that does suck, but at the same time, it likely doesn't mean any critical products or services are going to go away. Now, probably a small number will, but for the most part, like if some organization in the EU or like a government in the EU was reliant on something that Intel was offering, chances are that wouldn't go away. Just like Intel probably is not making a decision to take any of that stuff away. The concerning thing is you have our current administration where they actually do seem willing to talk about just saying, hey, this company or this type of product, we no longer export it, period. Like, we're keeping it for ourselves. Sure, that will terrorize that company's stock. It will minimize their value in the market. But yeah, we want to keep it for ourselves. And then all of a sudden, where are you at? Like, if you were reliant on something that Intel produced, you screwed.
Yeah, I mean, it was part of the issue with Intel losing revenue for a few years is just that like no one needed a PC for several years after everyone bought a new laptop during COVID, so that didn't help. But now we have lovely artificial demand from Windows 11 miraculously needing up-to-date processors. So,
well,
unfortunate.
They found that trick worked with Windows 10, so we're back with the same old scams.
I love the tech industry. It's so much fun. Okay, so I don't have anything more on the EU thing.
Yeah, neither do I.
Keep going.
Well, speaking of... Well, go ahead. This is more your topic.
Okay. I guess speaking of things related to money.
Well, okay.
The streaming service Max, which I at this point I feel the need to dead name it and call it HBO Max just because.
What do you mean at this point?
Well, I did go along with it for a while. I was like, fine, I guess it's dumb. Like,
you're the only one that went along with it then.
It's different from Twitter, where I was like, no, I'm not doing this. You're dumb.
Well, yeah, okay, yes,
but,
I'll agree these are different things, but not by enough. I was perfectly comfortable still dead naming this one as HBO, or at least I would call it HBO Max.
Yeah, HBO Max, because like otherwise you can't tell what you're talking about in a sentence.
Yes.
Which is real, like, especially when I'm trying to write an article about this, and I have to put like, Max is raising price, like on what, like the lemonade stand? Who's Max?
Well, and not only that, but if you speak it, if you speak it, now are we talking about Apple's computers? Like, right. Max is going up $7.99 per month. It's like, wait a second, what? My laptop's now subscription? Is that what's going on here? So yes, it's one of the worst names, especially when it lives in total isolation. It is a bad name. But I would also, it's kind of like if you were to say, if you start talking about one, like how many products have one in the name? How many companies have just decided one branding is a thing that they need to do? So yeah, it has that same energy in my view. Anyway, go on.
Yeah. So HBO Max is rolling out the same thing as Netflix and Disney Plus and a couple other services where they will charge you for access, like for account sharing, basically. So, in theory, if you have an account and like a friend or family member is borrowing it, they will detect that and make you pay for an extra member add-on. Um, and they mentioned that this costs $8 a month, regardless of which tier you are subscribed to. Which I think on the low that gets close to almost the same cost as like the cheapest plan. Um, so maybe not the most cost effective for most people, unless you're on like the whatever the higher one is. Um, and importantly, and I think Netflix also works this way, but I'm not really sure. They will not let you add paid extra members if you get HBO Max through a bundle. So if you sign up for that, Disney Plus HBO Max bundle, sorry, or like in my case, I get HBO Max from my phone plan. I can't add it. So now, my family can't just use it at all, which is cool. Doesn't really motivate me to keep it. Um, so, um, Kirby said so is $8 even for the 4K plan. Yeah, it's for all plans. So that would be more cost effective if you're on like the ultra high expensive one. People would save a few bucks, but I think that's pretty close to what the uh, base one. Yeah,
Okay,
basic
so
with ads is
the
$10 a month.
yeah, it's $10 a month for the basic, but that is technically the starting. Which, by the way, there's the monthly and the yearly pricing. So and that is 1080p streaming on 2 devices. The standard plan, which is $17 a month, adds the live sports and CNN Max. It also gives you up to 30 downloads to for offline viewing. It is still 1080p and still 2 devices. And then you can go to premium for $21 a month. This finally gets you up to 4K, 4 devices, but only 2 devices can stream sports. Dicks. It also can add Dolby Atmos and let's see, and raises that
I don't think
download limit.
I want to say they don't let you use 4K except on the premium plan.
Yeah,
I'm not
that's what
sure.
I said.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Yeah, that's cool.
so yeah, presumably, I would assume that if you're adding somebody with this add-on feature, I don't know for sure, but I'm assuming that they also get 4K if the primary plan is the premium plan. I I don't know that, but it seems to make sense.
Yeah. So in certain situations, the paid add-on thing is nice, but it's kind of a rude move for me to block it from bundle people. And yeah, I mean, even if you're like, I don't know, it's just annoying. It's the same complaints as all the other services where they're removing movies and shows and raising the prices and making it more difficult to use it. Um, and it sucks.
Well, the point that I have made in the past, and certainly I'm far from the first to make this point, the more that this happens, the more the more likely it is that people will just determine, hey, this is more complicated than it needs to be. It's more costly than it needs to be. And at a certain stage, it just becomes more time effective or cost effective to start pirating instead of paying. I'm not endorsing that. I'm not encouraging it. I'm just acknowledging that it is a viewpoint that I suspect a large number of people are taking, which is likely why we're seeing a relatively significant spike in piracy again lately.
Or just physical media.
That
Like
too.
physical media is having a little bit of resurgence now.
Though I feel like that's a little bit, sort of a little bit sticking it to the streaming companies and sort of a, we want to show off that we're not using you, and a little bit also sort of, because I think people are kind of coming back to the notion that, hey, having ownership of that media means that you can resell it. So like if you watch a movie for a few times and then say, all right, I'm done with this, you can just go resell it somewhere. Now, are you going to make good money? No, but you know, it's kind of a thing again.
Yeah, it's just annoying. Especially Warner Bros, which is just straight up evil at this point. um, that being said, if you do have Max, I did watch all of the first season of The Pit, and it is very good, and more people should watch that.
I
So
will
I need
get
them
to it
to,
eventually.
yeah, it's pretty good. So watch that if you have that, or pirate it and watch it. I won't tell.
In theory, you won't know. Yeah, I
That's
mean,
true.
you probably don't
Unless
know
you tell me, you don't need to
exactly.
check in with me. That's okay.
I mean, you could
You can
check
just
in with them.
you
It's
can just tell me you watched it, and we'll talk about it. You don't need to specify the delivery method.
it's correct. Yeah.
Um, so speaking of
Speaking of weird limitations that a company has decided to place on its products, I think that works.
I was trying something like, speaking of like downloading movies, because that's what
Okay.
that's like more than half of my Synology nest by volume. Um, but yeah, so speaking of things like that, Synology is also shooting itself in the foot. I love having a week where like I love it when every company I like just at one point is like, you know what, we're done with this like being cool thing. We're gonna make everyone suffer. I'm being a little bit dramatic, but it is kind of dumb. So this showed up initially on Synology's German website, and I made a note to look into this, but then Ars Technica beat me to the punch, unfortunately. When I saw this initially, I was like, is this a thing like Reddit people are getting mad about that doesn't matter? Because that's happening so much lately. Like that was 90% of the Plex update was like, yeah, the Plex update for phones kind of sucked, but everyone on that Reddit was like, this is the worst thing that has ever happened. This is like a war crime. I don't understand, why can't Synology just maintain like 50 apps for me? I don't get it. Um, but this is definitely at least dumb. I feel confident saying that. So the news was that Synology is about to release its 2025 models, like upgraded NAS units, and they mentioned that those will have a change in that they will only be fully supported with Synology branded drives. So, kind of, if you're not familiar with these at all, like Synology makes just like home NAS units where you can stick in some drives and set up various configurations, so you can back up your data across multiple volumes, or just use all the drives for storage and not have backups or whatever. But kind of one of the main selling points of a setup like this is you could just, whenever you see a deal on a hard drive, you can just buy it, or rip out hard drives of like external units that maybe weren't meant to do that, and just shove it in the thing, and it'll figure out how much storage it can allocate, and you can just keep doing that over time and accumulate like a lot of storage capacity based on drives you saw on like lightning deal on Amazon, or like in the clearance bin at Walmart that you ripped out of its enclosure. But with this, they want to limit the units to only drives that they've certified and have like the Synology branding, so they take like other companies' drives and resell them. And so specifically, they say Synology branded drives will be needed for use in the newly announced Plus series, with plans to update the product compatibility list as additional drives can be thoroughly vetted in Synology systems, a Synology representative told ours by email. Extensive internal testing has shown that drives that follow a rigorous validation process, when paired with Synology systems, are at less risk of drive failure and ongoing compatibility issues. Um, and on the German website, they said that without approved drives, it could fail to create storage pools and lose volume-wide deduplication and lifespan analysis. So, and the also the sticking point is like, not only can you not use whatever drives you find and stick it in there, the main reason people are upset about this is that after a certain storage capacity, the prices for Synology's own drives are quite a bit more than what you could find just directly from other manufacturers, or some people will just buy refurbished hard drives because like they're almost good enough or good enough sometimes. And then one of the main points of a unit like Synology is like, it's not the end of the world if one drive fails, because it's like mirrored across multiple volumes. You can just stick a new one in when that fails. So, not ideal. I will say for me, I'm still waiting on people to test this and see like where the actual line gets drawn. Like, will it just totally block external drives, which is kind of what or unsupported drives, which is kind of what it sounds like, or is this just a matter of like a couple features that most people don't need won't work?
So that was something that I was very curious about when this news hit, because the initial version of the story as it was circulated on, I believe it was Hacker News, or maybe it was Reddit, I'm not sure, and I don't really follow either of them, but I remember seeing it somewhere hyped up there first. The way that it was originally being claimed is that just straight up Synology will not support non-Synology drives, and it like that has since been basically debunked, and the wording from Synology seems to kind of confirm that is not what this is. But I'm curious if what they're really saying is you're just not going to get things like full lifespan tracking, which to that extent I kind of understand. If your software, like if your drives include features that are going to actively like work with that software, I kind of understand if you are saying, oh, other drives don't have this, like we can't offer the same reliability, so we've decided that that's maybe a user confidence issue, or a support issue. Right. We don't want to deal with that, so we're just not going to offer that feature with non-Synology drives. And if that's the case, I get it. That makes sense. And this could be a completely blown out story, because it might be taking too many assertions about what Synology is actually limiting. On the other hand, if you take away enough features or disable certain abilities too deeply, then even if those drives can be installed and used, if they can't, let's say, be used in certain types of RAID arrays, that's almost the same as saying that they're not supported at all. Like it would be similar to saying they can't be used. So right now, as far as I'm aware, that line hasn't been explained. And so that to me is the issue. Plus, it's not entirely clear to me if this is limited to certain models of Synology or if it's going to apply to all of their Synology NAS units. As in,
it's all of the Plus from 2025 on. Like they're not retroactively doing this.
right. But what I'm getting at was more along the lines of, is this going to be more of the enterprise focused units, or is this going to be like down to budget level, 2-bay NAS that people only get to run Plex? Because if it's applying at the enterprise level, truthfully, not surprised. Synology has not been particularly flexible with enterprise customers for a long time anyway. That's actually kind of normal in the industry. A lot of companies are surprisingly inflexible when it comes to enterprise hardware, and for the most part, enterprise is okay with that. They're not trying to deal shop hard drives, so that's probably okay for them.
Yeah, like the IT guys aren't like digging around the Walmart clearance bin for external WD drives to shuck.
Right. So if that's the case,
well, they might be if tariffs still apply to drives.
fair enough. And
data centers are gonna get rough.
And what company was it? I want to say it was Backblaze, but I might have that wrong. One of the big backup companies famously actually does do a bunch of hard drive deal shopping all the time, because it was definitely a backup company, and their whole thing was they go through so many drives anyway, and they figured out that they could, since they have redundancy on everything anyway, they could use cheap, kind of crappy drives to get away with it being more cost efficient. So they were more than happy to buy like consumer grade drives. They were happy to buy anything that was just super discounted and maybe even had some reliability issues, as long as the reliability wasn't like below a certain threshold. I wish I could remember what company that was, but I'm almost positive it was Backblaze. Regardless, there are companies that do this. But anyway, getting back to the point, I'm not sure that this is a disaster, but it's certainly being circulated. The story is being circulated as if this is disaster level for Synology. And to that extent, I am beyond confident that TerraMaster, Asus, but under the brand Asus Store, or Asus Store, I'm not sure how they... It's a really weird name that they came up with for that brand. Who else? QNAP, all of the major NAS makers. Oh, now Ugreen. I am sure all of them are absolutely loving this story. They are probably just in heaven, because this is about to send so many people their direction.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'll wait and see for like the exact extent of this. But the Synology server I have, even though it's really old, like it's still more than what I need. Like I slot in much higher capacity hard drives before I would get a new NAS. Like it's fine. And I can actually still upgrade. I can max out the RAM. That'd be a cheap thing to do at some point. But I'm definitely curious where this ends up by the time I would need a replacement for that. And I could see going to like Ugreen or something if Synology's in kind of a rough place. Especially because over the past couple of years, the home server ecosystem has really moved to using Docker as a universal platform. So that was kind of an advantage for Synology for a while, is that it had a lot of official, packaged apps for their servers. You can just one-click install and it works well. But now you can get almost that on really anything. Like even like a you throw on a Windows, uh, put Windows on a random PC you have and set up Docker desktop, and you can do the same thing. So the actual software library is mostly platform agnostic now, as long as you can get a reasonably recent Docker server or Docker engine on it. So that's also working against Synology because it's not that hard to the. I mean, really, it's like what happened to the desktop, where it's like as long as you have like a web browser, the underlying OS like doesn't matter that much underneath it, because most people just use websites on desktop now. So, we'll see.
Yeah, and well, it's funny you mentioned app platform, or well, Docker and app platforms, because for a long time, Synology's probably number one most installed package, Plex, always trailed way behind for reasons that were, at one time, they were clear and then they stopped being clear. But yeah, Plex server has always really, really trailed behind in versions on Synology. And the same is true with almost all the other NAS makers. In most of their cases, I think it has more to do with... I think the NAS company itself is doing the packaging of Plex and then just distributing it sort of on behalf of Plex. At least that seems to be how this is happening. But
yeah, I've still got the outdated Plex server package on mine that I need to manually upgrade or migrate to Docker.
Yeah, and I was gonna say at this stage, I could have this wrong, but I think you pretty much now have to, if you want to be on any reasonably current version of Plex, you're probably doing manual installs, manual updates instead of any sort of auto update solution. But yeah, running it as a Docker container is probably the better way to go at this stage, and it sort of sucks that's true, but it seems to be kind of where we're at. And I've noticed that when it comes to installable, like made for the platform installable stuff, all the companies are getting worse at that. So seeing that that's true, I think Docker is probably increasingly the way to go. Which sucks because Docker is probably the least user-friendly solution in many instances, but hey, it is what it is.
Yeah. I love using Docker and being like, where did my file go? Like where in this labyrinth of the containerized file system did my config file go?
Yes.
It's really fun.
Well, and how Docker works is, strictly speaking, not at all confusing. Like if you just lay out the simple concepts of, okay, here are the parameters you're going to use for starting up a container. Here's how you're going to map files to a real space that you can interact with. Here's giving permission to a Docker container to access certain things. Like, all that stuff is really simple to understand in terms of like the concepts. At least when they're explained properly, which Docker notoriously is terrible. Their documentation is horrendous. The problem is everything that comes down to the implementation of these things is really poorly done. It needs to be better, but I don't see that happening anytime soon.
Yeah, and there's also like a weird divide in functionality between Docker and Docker Compose, where like I have a Docker Compose web app that I developed myself, and I know how it works and how to set it up. I've not figured out how to set it up yet on my Synology, because whatever like workflow they have going on. Something breaks every time. Um, and similarly, like a lot of other software that isn't just in the Docker Hub doesn't seem to set up right, and I have to mess with the config files. But eventually you figure it out, and it's fine. Most of the time. And that goes on all the major NAS implementations. So as soon as you find something on Docker, you can get it on all of Synology's competitors.
Mm-hmm.
So if they do end up doing like worst case scenario and like self detonate, if you dare plug in a refurb drive you found on Woot, then it's going to be annoying to switch ecosystems, but it's definitely possible.
Yeah, and hey, sure, things will get there. Where the concept certainly isn't implausible or impossible, but yeah. So I don't know. I don't think there's a whole lot more to say on this. I mean, we've already kind of trailed off of Synology proper into just more, I guess, the sort of awkward state of things with NASes right now. But I do like the point that you made where a lot of home server stuff kind of has moved this direction. And not just in the sense of not just in the sense of moving to Docker for the app platform, but also kind of it feels like home servers where you used to just build it on an old desktop computer that you were done with, or even a laptop. It feels like a lot of them have moved more to the NAS like ecosystem, because people that I never would have pictured having a NAS before, they do have one now. And a big part of that certainly is Plex. You want to load in a few drives. Because just for example, if you want to host a Plex server and have a lot of storage space, honestly, like, sure, you could take a desktop computer and load a few drives into it, but you probably are limited on the number of drives. Most desktop computers don't actually have a ton of drive bays. Not that you're likely to find too many NASs that are in the consumer space, but hey, it is what it is. But also just the low effort of managing one. Like your Synology, I don't know what you do, but certainly with my NAS, I go for months and months at a time without actually looking at it. I mean, I move files around, but I don't load up the interface for it very often. I don't go in and manage stuff too much. I'm not constantly loading on new and different software. I've been experimenting more with a few different things, but for the most part, it kind of is just a box that I let it be an appliance. It's there to serve its purpose. It self-updates. It keeps itself as secure as it's going to, and I don't really want to deal with it beyond that. So, yeah, it kind of feels like NASs have met their not critical mass point, but the point where if you were the type of person to get one, you either are already shopping for one, or you have one, or you're just not going to get one.
Yeah, so I'm curious to see where this goes. The Synology software has been pretty effortless for me, so I'd like to not have to learn something new when I have to replace mine, but I'll live with a Ugreen.
Yeah, I was gonna say, for what it's worth, Ugreen's interface is actually very, very similar to Synology's.
Yeah,
TerraMaster's used to be, but they've changed their interface to be. I mean, it's not that different. Like you can learn it in like half hour, 45 minutes. You get used to it, but
Yeah.
yeah, Ugreen's is even more similar. But anyway, speaking of interfaces and things that are similar and whatever else, I kind of feel like this is maybe even the main story of the day. There's more information about Google I/O 2025 and the sessions that will be held. Oh boy.
I'll be right back. You can keep going.
Okay. So the session list has been revealed or expanded. I feel like there were already a few sessions listed, but maybe not. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Anyway, so they have shared the session list. I haven't actually looked through it, but this is one of those moments where I can feel somewhat comfortable letting other people do that particular examination. And there are a few interesting details that have come out. So perhaps the one everyone's jumping on, it's certainly the thing that has taken over the titles of most of the articles, is Material 3 expressive. So the overview, I'll just read this word for word. Level up your user experience and get a jump on the future of Google's UX design, Material 3 expressive. Learn how to use the new emotional design patterns to boost engagement, usability, and desire for your product. We'll break down the research, explain new guidelines, and share design files and alpha codes so you can start to experiment. I know, dramatic reading aside, honestly, this language gives me a little bit the creeps, but I want to come back to that. Really quick, I'll blow through some of the other topics that are here. Android XR, they've confirmed that the new SDK is going to go into beta preview during I/O. So in theory, like, they're probably going to talk about it and show it off, but I'm not clear on whether or not this is going to be like private beta where you can apply and maybe get in. Well, I guess, or if it's going to be a public beta where everyone can use it, but it won't necessarily be considered a final release. And there is definitely going to be no hardware until later this year. So this is all sort of today it's going to kind of exist, but it's not really fully existing until there's hardware to use it on and something that is really a public SDK. Whether or not it's called beta is kind of unimportant. Let's see. They are also going to talk about desktop windowing for Android. Basically, this is multi-window, or at least maybe split screen or whatever. This is a thing that's going to exist in Android, or kind of does exist in Android already. For those who may have forgotten, there is already multi-window support. There is basically full desktop support baked into Android. It's just not something that you are supposed to run on the phone. It's meant to be run elsewhere, and Google developed it basically so other companies could use it. So it is what it is. And evidently they are going to have more to share. We'll see how that plays out and what that turns into. Let's see. Also, Google Pay and Wallet. There will be news. What that entails, we don't know yet. Gemini Nano, they're going to be introducing a new set of generative AI APIs so that you can use Gemini Nano from Android apps, basically, and just this is for local AI gen. And Chrome is also going to be getting its own version of this, so there will be web APIs for accessing, I believe, Gemini Nano, though I'm not totally certain that's what it is. So we'll see.
I think it's that's been in testing for a while.
Yeah.
That's like a Chrome flag that's like whitelisted.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure what they're doing here is basically committing to formally announcing it, as opposed to just having a thing that obviously people could have already looked at. Because let's be honest, web developers are probably not following a lot of this stuff in the development track. They're far more likely waiting for some sort of formal final announcement, and that's what this will be. Though I'm sure they will be announcing this and re-announcing this at every developer conference for the next year. So, yeah. Anyway, before we go to the Material 3 expressive comments that I have, is there anything you wanted to discuss about these? Also, evidently they are also going to discuss Gemini coming to Android Auto and Android Automotive, otherwise known as Google Built-in, which I hate that name still.
Yeah. No, I mean I don't think I have thoughts on most of these.
Okay. So I read that overview for Material 3 Expressive. I assume you heard that even though you're away from the mic. Just this description of it, look, I don't want this to come out as an attack, but it kind of has to. It sounds so marketing speaky. Like this is the way when I see companies pitching some sort of product that they know is just sort of hokey and probably doesn't do anything. This feels like the language that I always get. They're talking about new emotional design patterns to boost engagement, usability, and the desire to use your product. That sounds like ad speak. An ad company would, which I know Google is, but this sounds like something that I expect PR people to have written when they're trying to say, oh, we have a product that we swear your customers will love this, engage with it, and they can't wait to spend more money. And in reality, like, you could implement this stuff and no one's going to care. Or people might care, but they're not going to care for the reasons you want them to. So, I don't know. I'm not against this. I frankly, I wasn't a big fan of Material U, so I'm hoping Expressive is a better direction. But we'll see.
Just in time for everything to get on Material U. We get to go through it again. I'm so excited for the next wave of 9 to 5 Google articles. It's like, guess what? This Google app finally got the new Material.
Hey,
we're all saved.
Hey, I've written way too many of those articles for Android Police, so
yeah,
I know.
But now it's just them doing it,
which seems kind of fitting. But
which is I'm not saying that to make fun of them. It's just, it gets funny when it's like Google does all the like big hit apps finally, and then they like years later finally get around to like remembering Google Authenticator exists. Mm-hmm. That's when it's funny.
Yeah.
Austin said messagely. Yeah, we got to get Liam on the RambleCast.
Yeah, one of these days I'd actually like to, but it's I haven't heard from him in a while. Anyway,
we're mutuals on Blue Sky. He still remembers me.
Actually, I don't know if I followed him on Blue Sky. I should, if I haven't. I never go on Blue Sky, so it wouldn't make a big difference. But, yeah. So, Material 3 Expressive uh, we haven't seen it yet, obviously, though. I think there was already a few indicators of what it was going to look like in some apps that have already come out. But regardless, I'm hoping that it corrects some of the what I consider to be mistakes in Material U. I'm not gonna go into a big analysis of what that is, but yeah, I didn't love Material U. Earlier versions of Material, I think, were far better approaches to UI design. But
I still have I still have a soft spot for like very late Hollow, where it was like we went past the point of all the apps looking like they were in Tron Legacy and kind of getting like a more muted version of that, but it still looked like slick and had like the hard edges on everything.
Okay, so you're basically talking about when they introduced cards.
Yeah,
And
like Nexus 5, like Google Now kind of
yeah,
design.
So
yeah,
I liked what I would say is I liked where it was at in the immediate aftermath of what I think you considered peak. So you liked right around the introduction of cards. I liked right at the beginning, the very, very beginning of Material Design. Like they announced Material Design and like roughly where it was at the time of announcement through about the next year. I think that was about peak.
yeah. I mean, early material, because also with early material, Google was definitely not afraid of splashing colors everywhere,
Yes.
which I appreciated. Like I opened the Hangouts app, and it was like all the buttons and bars are green. Like this is welcome to the green app. This is where the
Yes.
green app is. And then like it opened the phone, and it's like everything's blue. This is the blue app. You know where you are because it's the blue app. And then after a certain point, we got to the kind of like iOSification, where it's like, all right,
Everything.
all of our apps are kind of visually busy, so we're just gonna make everything white.
Yep.
And then the the apps that have cards will just be like white on white, which I wasn't a big fan of.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we both actually appreciated the exact same phase of design because we're the point where there was color to the OS was really like the thing. And yeah, turning everything just white with maybe little accent colors, it just felt so lifeless. And honestly, I kind of lost interest in using my phone after that. Like there was just there was less energy to using apps, and yeah, I just stopped caring, which I don't think that's what they wanted.
Yeah, and speaking on the topic, I'm trying to plan out like a kind of big interface overhaul for my link cleaner web app, and having like contrasting colors will be a primary component, because right now it's just like a big white page.
Austin saying he misses the fab.
The fab.
You know what? This is where Austin, you said it to me not that long ago, so I get to say it back to you. But I think this is definitively one of your worst takes. I just, to me, the fab. I'm not saying that the premise of it was bad. I'm not saying that the execution of it was necessarily bad. I think that the overabundance of it was horrific. Every app had a fab, and that was a mistake. There were apps that never should have had a fab. Some of them literally had multiple fabs, which was so stupid. By the way, for anyone who's listening to this and may not recognize the term, this stands for floating action button. Yes, fab is floating action button. So
Yeah, it was like you'd open an app and there'd be like a floating like plus button in the corner or something,
yeah,
and you
usually
tap
the
that
bottom
and it
right
would.
corner there'd be a little button that it if you were in, let's say, the Twitter app, it would be a button to start writing a tweet. If you were in Gmail, it would be a compose button. If you were in, uh, I'm trying to think of any of the other apps that, I guess the contacts app, like it'd be a button to add a contact. Um,
Hmm.
and
It would always be like the
or if you
main
were looking
act.
at an existing contact, I think it's switched to an edit button. I might be wrong on that, but think I think the contacts app was smart about being contextual with that.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, like it would usually be whatever the main action for the app was, and then some of them would have additional actions. Like I guess the inbox uh, app was like this from Gmail, where you would tap the button and it would open to more buttons
yeah, and
on top.
I was gonna say that to me that was the ultimate sign, admitting that like, yeah, you don't know what you're using this button for. Um, if if you have to have a, if the button just becomes another menu, it's literally no longer a floating action button. It's a floating menu button.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. I was thinking about this a lot when I was writing my article about why we can't have small phones anymore, and the biggest blocker at this point is really just that every app and mobile website is designed with like 6-inch phone screen in mind. Like that's kind of just the default now. And so what ended up happening is like kind of in the early Android days, you'd have an app where most of the functionality was tucked behind a hamburger menu because it's like, all right, the phone screen is small, so we need to like tuck all the like menus and stuff over here and make them open it. And then as screens got bigger, you started being able to have like a floating action button that's just always on the screen because look, we got all the screen space now. We're gonna fill it with stuff to reduce the number of taps everything takes. And then to kind of progress to like now apps have like several buttons that are always on the screen and like there's like a navigation bar at the bottom. I know obviously like the original iPhone also had like apps that had a nav bar at the bottom, but it became more of a common thing, I think, over the last couple of years. Um, and so now there's just more and more stuff on the screen, which is good because everyone figured out like if you hide buttons and menus behind a hamburger menu, no one finds them. So that's why everything's like this now. So the end result now is that when I get my iPhone SE out of my drawer and try to open modern websites and apps on it, they're all like scrunched and like I don't have a lot of visible room because it's filling up the screen as expected for a 5 or 6, 7-inch phone. Um, so it has been interesting how that design has evolved over time.
so
But I think the Fab kind of made sense in some apps when it was around, but it definitely just became like another hamburger menu with some of the the ones that would pop open and have more buttons. Like, no, you just kind of you forgot what this is for. I get the idea, but like you could just the like Android equivalent of this could have been an email. Like this could have been a hamburger menu.
yeah. So Austin took took 2 screenshots of the Twitter app. He posted them to the RambleCast chat room on Discord, and I have them up on screen for the stream. So this is just showing the Twitter app and the what happens when you press the button. So
Which
it does exactly that.
I
It pops open a menu of the various places that you might want to go, or rather, sorry, the various types of things you might want to create on Twitter.
right.
And
You got your button for racist post, and then your button for
racist photos, and then your button for racist conversations with other people,
for transphobic messages. Yeah.
and of course your
now
stream a racist rant live from the grocery stores. You yell at somebody about DEI or something.
Also, I will say I think this is my your fab take is that they shouldn't exist. My I have like a slight version of that, which is that do not do the fab button with a bottom navigation bar. You just have two, like you could have put it in the navigation bar. You didn't need to do that. Now, granted, it doesn't matter that much because for apps like this where your phone screen is so tall, you got a bunch of space. But like you could have put it in the nav bar. You can show. I mean, maybe not in Twitter's case because they got to put the grok button down there. But you know, I think in most cases you can shove it in there, like Google does with like Keep. I think they did it for a few apps. They did like a center fab button in the bottom nav bar.
So I'm I don't hold to the belief that okay, just to set the record straight, I don't think fabs shouldn't exist. I just think that they were grossly overused. Like I was fine with Gmail having one to compose a new email. That's fine. I think Twitter having one to start a new tweet. Cheers, makes sense. It's that I saw apps that had no sane interaction, no reason at all for having a fab, would somehow force one into existence. And it when I say some, I mean actually like the majority of apps I saw. This became one of the overly common things because everyone felt like they had to have a fab. And at a certain point, and I still hold that this is exactly what we saw, so I think I was right about this, but the fab became the new blinking text of Android. Like it was just everywhere for no reason. And it was in the way. In a lot of instances, it did not do anything useful enough to warrant being a persistent element, not just on the screen, but actively blocking content. That's where my objection to the fab was. For just to pick one kind of mediocre example, Google Photos. I don't even remember what the button did, but it did have a fab for a long time. And I don't have any idea what it did because everything it would have done was something that made more sense being in like an action bar or being like a long press action or any number of other things would have made more sense for how you would access them. But for some reason they did have a fab. And that's not even nearly the best example. I know I've seen much worse. I just can't think of what they are right off the top of my head right at the moment. So yeah, I think it was a good idea. It was just very, very weirdly overused. And then of course, yes, just a couple years later, the bottom nav bar became a thing again where Google and Apple both had like shunned this and said they didn't like it and then didn't want it, and then turned around and it's like, yeah, phones have gotten tall, we think this is a good idea again. Which, okay, circumstances changed, I actually agree, it was a good idea to bring it back. But yeah, it started creating a lot of weird scenarios where you still had some apps that were using the drawer. You had some apps that had overflow menus, so the drawer was, of course, the hamburger menu. The overflow menu was the 3-dot menu, which, we already have the hamburger, which is 3 lines. Then there's 3 dots. There were apps that would have both of those, plus they had the fab. And then some of those same apps you saw introducing bottom nav bars, and it's like, how many navigation elements can we have? And very few apps, I think, had all 4 of these. In fact, yeah. I think most apps only really ever had like 2 at a time in most cases. But you had so many people going, well, okay, you guys keep talking about consistency, but you're changing and reintroducing things every couple of years. You're never going to get consistency if everyone thinks that this week the hot thing to do is bottom nav. And, oh, there's some people with really popular apps that still have the drawer. And there's this and there's that. Like, the constant shifting and reintroduction of these things ensured there was no continuity, which is a thing that Google kept saying, oh, we want tons of continuity. Well, obviously you didn't. And I know that's a messaging problem, but it was pretty clear that was an issue. So in a small way, I'm a little bit worried that Material 3 expression is possibly going to suffer from that same sort of confusion.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a strong opinion on the Android side, but also interesting that this is happening at the same time as iOS 18 will supposedly be a pretty substantial redesign. So we're going to get maybe some fun convergent evolution going on, maybe. Or just each company goes in a very different direction.
To be honest, I'd kind of love to see that, but I don't think we will. If anything, I have a feeling that this is sort of the convergence of evolution situations where we're probably just going to see a ton and a half of apps all wanting to do design one time. So whatever is kind of the hybrid between Material 3 Expressive and whatever iOS 18 is introducing, or 19 or whatever. I have a feeling that what we're going to see is a lot of developers basically saying, you know what, we can sort of shoehorn whatever design principles these two companies come up with, we'll shoehorn them into one kind of midpoint, and that's just what they're going to develop from then on. Because honestly, nobody wants to do design multiple times. No one wants their screenshots to look weird, different, or confusing across platforms. And yeah, and in many cases, people are trying to do a cohesive, like shared code base. Not just shared at the back end, but like they want the UI to be shared, so they're using frameworks that are cross-platform. And once you're doing that, like the last thing you want to do is have different design principles going into the UI.
Yeah, I mean, we're still going to have all the React Native apps that don't really fit in with any specific platform's design. They're just kind of vibing. And then also Google still kind of uses Material on like their iPhone apps. So yeah, Kirby, I did mean to say iOS 19. I don't know what version we're on. I only know when I get the surprise iOS updates that take 30 minutes to install. Fun times. That's what they need. Don't redesign my phone again. Just figure out how to do A/B updates, Apple.
Oh man, that 100% that needs to be one of Apple's like major goals for the next, let's say, 2 years, is find a way to do A/B updates. Also, I'm going to argue that if Apple is going to do anything, and I know this should be a Google discussion, but if Apple's going to do anything, in addition to doing updates in a less intrusive or less annoying way, the other thing they got to do is fix the App Store so that they can serve different versions of an app to different devices, because that's something Google is doing. And look, I'm not going to say it's perfect. There are problems, But oh my god, the app sizes are like a tenth of what they are on Apple's apps. Not
Yeah,
literally, it's actually more like a third or something. But yeah, just the mere fact that you're not downloading resources that you will never use on a device. That is
yeah.
that is the worst thing about Apple or getting apps from the App Store. And that's got to go.
Yeah, also that's more an issue when as soon as your iPad or iPhone or whatever stops getting iOS major updates, you have like a year, maybe 2 years until major apps start disappearing because they only want to compile for the last two major releases or something. Like I bet if I go look at Disney Plus on the App Store, the minimum version will be iOS 16. So that's the two versions behind. So, you know, that becomes a problem too. And of course, like the ability to download older versions doesn't necessarily mean that Disney Plus would want to keep the last version for insert iOS version here functioning for a long time, but it might make a difference for some stuff. At least, especially with the apps that like don't really need to be updated constantly or like are attached to some service.
Mm-hmm.
Kirby said still waiting for Touch ID in the screen. Yeah, I would also like some version of Touch ID back. Face ID sucks. I don't care what any of the Apple people say. It still sucks. I want my fingerprint sensor back. Especially, you know, there was the update a while ago, like during kind of peak COVID when Apple tweaked Face ID to work with masks. That has never worked for me. So like almost every time I'm out in public and I'm wearing a mask, I have to type in my iPhone's passcode every time. It's never worked for me. But you know what is still you know, I've still got my fingers when the mask is on. I wish I could use those. So, all right, do we have anything else on the Google I/O?
No.
Okay. Yeah, I was just also going to bring up. I did read a. I don't know if I'm going to be able to find it, but Google did lay off a lot of people on the Chrome team a while ago, and I saw someone mention like there were people who were gearing up to give like Google I/O presentations that just got randomly fired. So that's kind of shitty, and Google I/O will be short some pretty cool people because of that. So wish I could find the blog post I was reading from one of the devs, but
For what it's worth, sure. Google I/O has it has been a long time since they've really put a lot of effort into the web technology side. So I/O itself, I have a feeling probably isn't going to lose all that much content, but their web developer summit, I think that's what it's called, that's probably going to be really rough.
Okay, I googled it. I was trying to find the blog post, and that was actually part of hundreds of people laid off across Pixel, Chrome, and Android. So okay. I might have only seen the Chrome stuff out at the time because I follow a lot of Chrome people on socials. A couple of them were like, "Yeah, I don't work there anymore."
Yeah, well, makes sense.
That's not fun. Okay, all right. So jarring shift in tone to Google Fi. Remember Google Fi exists, guys?
Yay.
The artist formerly known as Project Fi. Google Fi is changing. It's adding features and shifting its plans around again. So the Google Fi being Google's NVMe carrier, using exclusively T-Mobile at this point. It used to also use Sprint and US Cellular, but they stopped working with US Cellular, and Sprint is now T-Mobile. So that's what happened to that. The main thing is that they have a new plan called Unlimited Essentials, which is unlimited calling, text, and data uh, for $35 a month. But when they say unlimited, what they actually mean is 30 gigabytes. And then after that, they drop to 256 kilobits per second. So, if you're stranded somewhere and you already blew through your data cap, you can eventually load Google Maps to find yourself back home. But that's about it. So that plan, like, it might be a good option for some people. I'm not sure what the pricing situation is like on T-Mobile and VMOs. I know some people, like, they need to be on one network or the other because some, they're not covered by all the big ones. So that one might be okay for certain people, but there's also still Visible that starts at like $25 a month, and as far as I know is actually unlimited. It's just that you're deprioritized behind actual Verizon customers. So, if you're going to like a heavily populated area, your speeds might suck, but otherwise you're fine. And also all of Visible's plans have like the with this Google Fi plan, it doesn't have most of the things people like about Google Fi. So it doesn't include international coverage. It doesn't let you add more, data-only devices. Doesn't have hotspot or anything like that. So it's pretty bare bones. And again, I really wish every carrier would stop calling everything unlimited when it's not. This is effectively a 30 gig plan, but $35, it's on T-Mobile and Vimo. I'm sure it makes sense for some people.
Yeah, if you're not on one of the old pay-as-you-go plans, if you're comparing this against their like more actual unlimited plan, then yeah, this is a good price, and a lot of people aren't going to use that data, so that's fine. But yeah, I don't know that I'd call it a good plan. It's just an alternative that will fit some people better than what they already offer. That being said, I think the pay-as-you-go plans are for anyone who's probably going to like this plan. The pay-as-you-go, I think, is actually still going to be better, and I'm not sure they even still offer those.
Yeah, they do.
Do they? Okay.
Yeah, it's so you need to go to the Google Fi plans, because I forget what the pricing for that is now.
Well, okay, I should note, it's what I have on my second phone. It's just I use basically zero data month to month, so I don't actually actively use it anymore.
That's how I was living on Project Fi back when I had it, because pretty much most of my time I was either at home where I had Wi-Fi, or at school where I had Wi-Fi, or work where I think I always had Wi-Fi. I don't my two in-person jobs I had a decade ago. I don't remember anymore. But yeah, I mean, I went some months where I was like, nice, I use like 42 megabytes so at the end of this month. But yeah, they do still have those. So that one is $35 a month. For
that's
2
for
gigabytes, and then oh, damn it.
Yeah, I know.
I hate every carrier does this. They're always like, "All right, you're buying phone plan for a family of 5, right? That's what you're doing."
Yeah. Well, the difference is that the cost per line goes down with the more people that you are signing up. So it is a little hinky that way. Anyway, it ends if it's just for a solo person, it's $20 for one, and it seems like it goes. I didn't check all of them, but as I recall, it goes down a little bit more with each person or something like that. And then $10 per gigabyte of data used, which Yeah, it all just depends on how much you're actually going to use, and then it gets prorated back the following month for like you pay one you pay for 1 gig up front, and then whatever you don't use of that like rolls back and prorates out the following month and blah blah blah. So at
Yeah,
least I
I
think
mean,
that's still how they're doing it. I haven't even looked at my bill in forever because it's just the flat $20 plus whatever tax is on it.
yeah. No, I mean that's still how it works. And you get international service and adding more devices and so on. Which I was looking at this and thinking like if that mythical 5G MacBook ever comes out, and I get that, I think that would be a good motivator for me to go to Google Fi.
Yeah,
So I
yeah,
just have like
100%.
a data bucket sharing it on everything. Um, but yeah, so they have that cheap unlimited plan now. If you want that, they also bumped up some of the other plans. So unlimited standard used to have 35 gigabytes of high speed data, which is not unlimited. I have to state this: 35 is not unlimited. Now that's 50, and it now has 25 gigabytes of high speed hotspot, up from 5 gigabytes. So pretty good. And then the premium plan now has 100 gigs per month instead of 50. Um, and those are $50 a month and $65 a month for one line, respectively. So, not that bad at all. Um, and then the other kind of big functional improvement they made is you can now add. So, if you never use it, Google Fi is still unique in the fact that you can get additional data SIM cards for your plan, and you can stick them in spare phones or cellular tablets, or if you've got a laptop with 5G or whatever. You can you can use all of them, and when you use data on those devices, it takes it from the same pool of data as your phone. So you could have that 50 gig plan or whatever, and you just share that 50 gigs across your phone and your laptop and tablet, whatever, which is really nice if you have a lot of devices, because every other carrier makes you have like a flat fee per device, and they usually have their own data pool. So that is pretty cool. And Google has made that better now because they now let you set up data only devices with eSIM. So you no longer have to wait for the SIM card to come in the mail. And perhaps more importantly, this lets you finally use other devices that don't have SIM card slots. So a lot of recent iPads, like 5G iPads, do not have SIM card slots. So they just couldn't use Google Fi until now. So that's cool. And I mean, it also speeds up setup for whatever devices support it. And you can still order a SIM card if you need one. So, pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've also mentioned they were expanding like the number of countries where Fi works. I'm not entirely sure if that's new or not. And they, still have watch plans and all other stuff. Like Kirby mentioned in the chat that Visible still doesn't support Pixel Watch, and I did see also this week that Boost Mobile now has tablet and watch plans if you have a line with them, but both of those are exclusive to Apple devices, which is weird. I don't remember ever seeing a carrier that was like, tablet, you mean an iPad? There are no other tablets. The Apple Watch thing I get, because like that really does seem to be like by far the majority of people buying cellular enabled watches. So I can kind of get that a little bit more. But the tablet thing was weird. It's like, now I'm pretty sure there are a lot of other tablets that exist. Or maybe stick it in a one of those hotspot devices or whatever.
Yeah.
So I remember when I was on Project Fi, it was the best thing ever when I was reviewing stuff at Android Police, because I'd get a new phone and I would just pop one of the data only SIMs in it and keep the main SIM in my main phone. So I could just like take whichever one I wanted out of the house and it would have service. And this was also back when Project Fi had the ability to route all your calls and texts through Hangouts. So I could just get the same calls and texts on all of my phones and my computer. It was great. That was a fun like a couple years that existed, and then of course they killed it.
Yeah, it's really weird to look back over a lot of the things that Google used to offer and realize, hey, that used to be a thing. Why doesn't that exist today? Like, your product has barely changed, or you had a good product and now it has changed. Like, whichever the scenario is, why don't we have the good thing anymore? In many cases,
Yeah.
it had to cost more to remove it than it did to have just left it there.
Yeah, and yeah, so that was great for a while, and then at some point after that, I got my legendary review unit of an LG budget phone that had a AT&T SIM card in it, because it was, you know, AT&T carrier phone, and that SIM card just never got deactivated. So then, like, for several years, I used almost exclusively Android phones that were dual SIM. So I could use the and especially this combined with like Project Fi, where, you know, if I only use the data on the free review unit SIM card, my monthly bill every month was almost nothing. So that rocked. That was great. That SIM card did die eventually, though, which is sad, but it was great while it lasted.
Yeah, well, can't have free forever.
Yeah.
Um,
I did
let's.
get a taste of that again though when uh, I tried out the T-Mobile lets you sign up for, like, I think it's 3 months of service. I think it's once a year per device you can do it, and so I did get that again, where I was just using T-Mobile service as my data line on my iPhone with the dual eSIM, and then keeping my phone number. That was cool too. But yeah, I could see going back to Google Fi if you know, I obtain a 5G MacBook or something similar to that. Right now, I've been on Cricket for a few years and they're fine. I think that's about the best you can say about a phone service, is like it works. It works and it doesn't cost that much.
You aren't catastrophically terrible. Congratulations.
Yeah. I've never ever had to talk to support. I think that's pretty good. For whatever reason, AT&T just has fantastic service in Raleigh, and a lot of North Carolina.
Well, in fairness, every time I've tried talking to AT&T support, they were, for the most part, screwed before I even called them, because these situations were almost always bad. But admittedly, they were also generally made worse, because 9 times out of 10, they either could only offer sort of the bare level of quality, or they weren't allowed to do or at least they claimed they weren't allowed to do the things that I was asking for. So my experiences with AT&T haven't been wonderful, but I'm not sure how much of that is their fault. Some little thing flying right around my head. So yeah, I don't know. And then of course there's Google support, which famously not wonderful.
Okay,
Anyway.
so we got two more topics left. Next thing is just a fun little thing. You may have heard of Rockbox. which is an alternate firmware that is open source for primarily music players. So, a bunch of old MP3 players, a bunch of iPod models, and Rockbox released a new major update. This actually happened on April 1st, but I didn't see anything about it for like 2 more weeks. So, yeah, whatever. Uh, the my page didn't load. Okay, there we go. So the new update. If you've never used it, I have Rockbox actually on my first generation iPod Nano, and it was really nice when I put this on here the first time, because this was back when I was using not good computers, because I didn't have a job that I could buy things with. So I was using older computers with iTunes, which was like the nightmare scenario. Like iTunes, just massive pile of shit on every computer. So when I saw that, the cool thing about Rockbox is when I installed it on here, it makes it putting like music and podcasts and stuff on a Rockbox device. It just shows up as a flash drive, so I can just move MP3s over, and Rockbox will figure it out, which is really nice. I did not have to touch iTunes at all, which is the ideal iTunes usage.
That's a blessing,
especially back then. Yeah, and it also did add Rockbox in most cases adds a lot more features than were available on the stock firmware. Like support for more audio codecs. You can throw some like more lossless audio formats. iPods, I think, were always pretty good with supporting mainstream formats, but I think Rockbox adds a few more. Also, Rockbox managed to add video support to this, and I did encode some videos. It was like a weird, like I forget what the actual format was, but I remember something I had to use, I think, Handbrake for. But they did get a video player working on my first gen Nano and some other iPods, and then they also had like, of course, they had Doom on here, so I have Doom on this iPod. Not a good experience to play, but it is on there. So this update, they mentioned that this is the first update since 2019. They dropped support for a lot of old Arcos players, which allowed them to modernize the code base a lot, and other improvements. So they added support for a couple more music players. There is no additional iPod model supported. So it's still limited to all the iPod classics, like the normal, hard drive iPod video, as well as the first two iPod Nanos and both of the iPod Minis. So newer iPod Nanos still can't use this, unfortunately. But it is on a lot of the older ones. If you have an old iPod, I would recommend checking it out. You can actually, I believe this is the default setup, but I'm not sure. But on my iPod Nano, when I started up, it asked me, do I want to boot into the Apple OS or boot into Rockbox? So you can switch between if you're not, effectively a dual boot. But this version adds, they updated all the like codecs, so there's better FLAC playback, better metadata support. There's a lot of UI improvements, performance improvements. Kind of the main thing is that they now support drives larger than 2 terabytes. So I know there's some, I've seen people mod like iPods to have like SD cards in them instead of the shitty mechanical hard drives. So I don't know if you can load in like a SD card larger than 2 terabytes in one of those. I think some of them have like multiple SD card slots, so I don't know, but Rockbox does now support GPT partitioning and drives that exceed 2 terabytes. as long as the individual partitions are smaller than 2 terabytes. But that's not, that's fine. That's not a big deal. So you can put a lot of a lot of flags on there. That's at least 10 flags. And they also update a lot of the the plugins and built-in apps, and just generally everything's a lot better. And they still support all of the iPods, so you can put this latest Rockbox release on like an original iPod if you want to. So your 22-year-old iPod has a new update you can install. I don't know. I think the first iPod was 2001, but I can't do that math in my head. 24 years. Okay, that's how old that is. So yeah, so check that out if you have a really old iPod and you want to do more fun stuff with it and not use iTunes.
Okay. I would try to add some color commentary on this, but I have none. I mean, it's good that it's good someone's doing this. I'm sure it's quite a interesting project to be working on, but I don't know.
Yeah.
This is keeping alive old things that I will not be touching anytime soon, if ever. So yeah.
I think I saw there's only one supported device that is still sold, which I'm sure is mostly because like the market for kind of higher end music players is very small, and also I think all of them are just Android now.
Most likely, yeah.
And this isn't really like a custom ROM. It's more like lower level firmware they're targeting. So
well, I would refer to this as embedded,
yeah.
an embedded OS, because it's designed to run on extremely low power hardware, or well, relative to current standards, this is extremely low power hardware.
Yeah. So definitely check that out if you dig up an old iPod and want to get the most out of it. And speaking of software, I guess Google got called a monopoly again by the United States government. They're starting to consider actions against Google for accidentally owning the entire internet. The main one they've been looking at is forcing Google to sell off Chrome. And in that court case, OpenAI testified and said, we'll buy it if they'll, fix the problem. Which I don't think there's a realistic chance of that happening. Not because they don't have the money for it. I'm absolutely sure if, they breathe, someone will give them an absurd check. But if the goal is you can't have a search engine owning a web browser, then ChatGPT eliminates that because it is a search engine now. And also OpenAI is I don't think it will happen. I think the fun part about this whole thing is like it's become clear like Google probably shouldn't own Chrome. Like they shouldn't have dominance over ideally no one company should have dominance over web browsers. But Google is unique in that developing a good web browser that is not like selling all of your data. Like they're in a unique position to offer that, and because it benefits them because all their services are web-based and they don't need to sell your data going through Chrome because they will just advertise to you with that data. They'd rather not sell it actually. So we're in the fun position now where like Google probably shouldn't have this, but also I can't think of any other company that would be a better owner of Chrome.
It's it
Outside of the possibility of like Chrome becoming this weird like thing that like becoming like the Hulu of web browsers, where just like a bunch of big companies in this space have like a 10% share. Which I
yeah,
don't know, maybe they'll do that, but
I mean,
the
I could
more
certainly
likely
see like a Chrome
scenario,
consortium. That wouldn't be a
yeah,
bad idea. What would worry me, honestly, okay, I'll just jump in on this and say, first off, I'm with you. I don't think OpenAI should have Chrome because yeah, it's certainly the same, if not more, possible conflict of interest than what Google already has. I know it's weird to think that OpenAI might be more, but and I'm not saying it is more conflict of interest, but I feel like with the completely open-ended nature of how they seem to be aiming to expand, I wouldn't rule out the possibility of OpenAI very rapidly becoming an even worse conflict of interest. That being said, the only other companies I can think of that wouldn't necessarily show bad as on paper, they're companies that I think would prove to be bad or worse in reality, like Oracle. I'm sure Oracle would love to get Chrome because they couldn't wait to get Java at one point in history. They couldn't wait to get a few other things. So and we've seen what they did with everything else that they got, and they made it all extremely bad in some way, shape, or form. And so, yeah,
yeah,
there are
like
worse companies that could get Chrome than OpenAI. Again, Oracle, but I don't.
it's gonna be fucking Palantir, or like just like the worst imaginable tech companies. Everyone give it up for welcome to the Lockheed Martin browser.
A small part of me thinks it would be hilarious if it was Microsoft. Just let Microsoft have Chrome, and then they can sit on it. They can sit on it for 15 years and let it dry up, just like they did Internet Explorer.
Well, like it's so funny because I think like Microsoft would also be in that position where they have a compelling argument to develop a web browser because that is important for the success of Windows, and they have done a lot of positive work to Chromium, but they have now proven that they cannot say no to all of the product managers at that company. Like Edge is the most user hostile piece of software I've ever used in my entire life. Like it is actually crazy how much it presents settings to you, but then will quietly flip them back when you're not looking. If you like don't literally, this is not an exaggeration, if you do not like uncheck a tiny box in the corner of Edge when you are opening on a Windows PC, it will quietly import all of your data from whatever web browser you're using, and then keep doing that on a recurring basis, so that when Windows like tricks you into opening Edge, it's like, oh well, all my stuff is here, so this must be Chrome. Like that's what they're going for. Like it's just even on Mac it's awful. Like it was flipping all my settings back anyway. So Microsoft should be capable of like running in this in much the same way that Google runs Chrome now, but they just fully ruined it. Much more than Windows, which is impressive. But so yeah, Microsoft would be pretty bad. I don't know. Like Apple isn't really interested in building cross-platform web browsers, so that wouldn't happen. Even though I think they should. I need to write that article again. I wrote it like a couple years ago that Apple needs to bring back Safari for Windows. I still think that. But they've not done that. So
I think I know who I want to own Chrome. Alta Vista.
Oh, okay,
I don't even know if anyone still owns that name.
sure.
Okay, so earlier you said that you think that Edge is the most user hostile software that you've ever used. I mean, how much of a place of privilege must you speak from? Because you've never used an app that secretly is trying to deport you. Hello, ICE.
Yeah.
It can.
Yeah.
There is no more user hostile crap. Anyway, sorry, that joke, if we'll call it that, popped to mind, and I just had to get it out. But yeah, I can't think of anyone that I would want to buy Chrome. That's it. We talked about this 2-3 weeks ago, maybe more, probably.
I think it's just a monthly.
Yeah, kind of. But that's part of the issue. As much as I agree, I mean, we both would say this. Yeah, Google owning Chrome is not a good situation. It's certainly not, because a company that basically dominates the search engine market, even if their control is definitely slipping away, they're still an extremely overwhelming majority of search. And Google is an ad company. Google also owns a whole separate platform, Android. And you pile on just all these different factors. And of course, obviously, and this is to be expected, Google also has a boatload of web services. When you factor all these things together, man, it really seems like Google is overly vertically integrated. Like, it is a circle. Vertically integrated companies, the idea is, hey, I have one product that feeds another product that feeds another product. And sometimes that's good, sometimes it's bad. Obviously, it's good for profit and saving money. But it can also obviously be bad if it's creating kind of a market exclusion system. Which, as a side note, I feel like Adobe dances up to that line a little too often. But regardless.
Man, can you imagine Adobe buying Chrome? Ooh.
Corbin, it's been a bad enough day already. You didn't have to do that.
Yeah.
But no. So, yeah. The point at which a vertically integrated company then can wrap around, and the product that feeds a product that feeds a product is then able to feed that originating product too. Like, vertically integrated in the form of a loop is that is the definition of like conflict of interest and controlling the market. And that's what Google has achieved. The problem is finding a company that can afford to buy Chrome. I mean, already right there, that is a huge asking price, even for a piece of open source free software. You control too much if you own it. So any company that can afford to buy Chrome needs to get a fairly significant return on investment. And how are they going to do this? Well, any answer you give, no matter who it is and no matter what direction it would go, you end up sitting in a situation of saying, yeah, they would all make Chrome into a thing that is worse in some way or another, because they don't have that loop built up where Chrome effectively pays for itself. And so if you don't have that loop, they have to make it worse, and no one wants it to be worse.
Yeah, and we're well past the point where most people would like pay for a web browser. So I think that, you know, it would have to be maintained through ads or selling your data or both. Um, and yeah, I don't know. I don't think there's a good solution here. I can't even be like give it to Mozilla because like Mozilla can't run anything. Like I wish so badly that Mozilla could be a functional company, but they seem allergic to like focusing on Firefox. And almost everything they've tried to spin off or build as a separate product to help pay for Firefox so they don't have to get Google checks to sustain themselves has not worked.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish they would. You know, now they're like properly investing in Thunderbird and trying to build that into like a paid product ecosystem, but that might be too little, too late for them. I don't know. I wish they would be different. I'm still using Firefox as my main browser. It's still good. I just wish they would they would stop being silly. Um,
Well, and also
so
also the notion of giving Chrome over to Mozilla is sort of like saying, sure, let's give Plex over to Jellyfin.
yeah,
I mean, you don't give a product to its biggest competitor.
yeah,
Because yeah, that wouldn't make any sense. It's just one of those two products would be abandoned because of course it would be. Um,
yeah.
so
And I'm also interested in the question of what happens to Chromebooks when this happens. I assume that's one of the main motivators in all of the software work going on to make Chromebooks kind of just Android laptops. Um, but I don't know what would happen to the existing Chromebook business. Um, would they? I don't know. And also, what would be the web browser in Android? Because if Google doesn't own Chrome, then maybe they'll just switch that out. Maybe they'll just, stick something else in there. I don't know.
strictly speaking, if the agreement is that Chrome and presumably Chromium both would be going to somebody else, my presumption is that Google would be device activated on that. My presumption is Big G would either be licensing Chrome/Chromium back, or that they would just be using it for free. Whichever the case is, I suspect that they would just keep using it. There's not really a good reason not to, and as long as the cost isn't too high, like they'd probably have to use somebody's.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe they'll go back to using WebKit, like early Android. Come full circle.
I mean, it's a funny notion, but I just don't see. I don't see any reason that they would. Chromium has passed so far beyond what WebKit was. I can't see a reason why they would want to go back that way.
Yeah. So someone will buy Chrome, but it probably won't be OpenAI.
Sure hope not.
Yeah. It's gonna be someone awful.
Someone
Or,
awful.
if
the American dream.
Yeah, or I mean, maybe Chrome just gets sold to the Trump media company, because that's kind of just how we're doing things now, and it will be fully integrated with the Trump cryptocurrency, and it'll be great.
You watch your dirty effing mouth. No, I honestly, the thing that I know we said it before, I think it bears saying again, this is going to get wrapped up in appeals for so long. Um, by the time it's done, every judge who's touched it, every courtroom that it's been in, someone is going to come away from this saying, "Oh, yeah, you know what? There's this narrow definition of how stuff is supposed to be handled, and because of that, this part of the ruling just doesn't count anymore." So this, whatever ruling they make, it's going to get stripped away piece by piece until ultimately it's just a fine, and Google will pay the fine and move on. So, and I don't know, maybe it won't work that way, but it will. It definitely will. You don't pay for it, people with enough money already aren't paying for their sins. So why should a big tech company pay for a monopoly that even a lot of users come away saying, well, it's a monopoly, but we'd still rather have this than the alternatives. Like, at some point, if Google asks for enough jury trials, they will probably win just on the pure fact that somebody will hear an argument about, oh, well, Google's better than the alternatives, or Google having it is better than the alternatives, at which point there's someone out there that's going to say, yeah, I'm just going to say not guilty because I'm scared of what would happen if they get screwed. So
well, that's Mozilla.
Yeah.
Mozilla's been repeatedly in court being like, hey guys, I know you were talking about those search engine payments, but we kind of need those, so can you leave those alone?
It's almost like protection money, but in a weird sort of reverse form. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just don't see a version of this where Google is separated from Chrome. I mean, it could happen. There could be a ruling that actually orders it, but it will get caught up in appeals, and by the time any of this could possibly get through a courtroom, like to the actual point of Google exhausting all of its appeals, to the point of a judge coming down with the final, like, all right, here's what you actually have to do. Because I have a feeling that even after sentencing for this trial, there will eventually be a new round of sentencing that effectively says, okay, here's what the previous judges have said, now here's what you have to actually do. By the time it would reach any of this, I think that any ruling that comes out today is just going to be so watered down, so non-impactful, lacking any sort of relevance or power. I think the final ruling is going to be you have to accept more open source commits or something, or you have to work with an outside group to make sure that Chrome is meeting the needs of other companies or something. I just see it becoming this, not even a slap on the wrist, just more like a threat. And Google will then just go back to what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'd be fine with the end result of this. Again, this requires like Congress to sign laws, so it's not going to happen. But I feel like just having a EU style, like, you pick the web browser you want when you buy a new phone, that starts solving this, because that immediately starts diverting browser market share away from Chrome. People who want Chrome can still download it, but it won't just be the default. They can pick, or just, again, like, slap a big fine on Google, and then just all of that money immediately goes into like an investment pool that works on other web browsers. Like, gives Mozilla a grant, gives the Servo project a grant. Apple doesn't need more money, but like, if they, I guess they can take it if it's from Google. There's versions of this that, like, I'm fine with. Again, it is difficult where, like, Chrome again, like, is mostly an okay experience. The only part that gives me pause with Chrome now is all of the shopping stuff that they've been putting into it. Um, that's kind of a damper on the user experience. But like other than that, like it's still fine. I don't use it as my main browser, but when I need to use it for testing stuff, it's fine.
Mhm.
So I don't know. Like I again, I don't really see a situation where there is a better corporate overlord for Chrome. For Chrome. So I don't know.
Also, just as a side note, the last thing I'm looking forward to reading is some Googler writing a long, uh, basically a long open letter saying the actions of the court today are very discouraging to us in a free and
Yeah.
open environment, and we believe in this, and their decisions today will impact millions, billions of users across the world and limit their safety and security. Oh my God, don't you understand how incredibly wonderful Chrome is, and how benevolent we are for sharing it with the world. The
Yeah,
end.
the
Please vote against breaking us up.
yeah, no, the 9 p.m. Google corporate blog post after every like each court decision have been wild. Like I've never seen like a press release that's so mad, just like
Apple.
seething with rage. Yeah, Apple gets there too,
No,
for sure.
Apple's definitely worse. Um, when Tim Cook goes on a gets fired up, man, there's some strongly spoken words that you can tell they are dripping with absolute vitriol, but at the same time they're somehow said very nicely.
Yeah, I think if Google actually has to sell Chrome, the next blog post would have a slur in it. Like they're just gonna go, they're gonna lose it. Whatever VP is writing this blog post is gonna hit publish on a unhinged, unedited rant.
Not gonna lie, I want to see that. Like
Yeah, I think
legit,
it'd be
I want
funny.
to see that.
It'd be funny. It'd be funny for sure.
But yeah, I don't think we're gonna get that. I think we would just get the super hostile.
It's
Uh,
gonna be yeah. It's gonna be like every strongly worded letter from the Democratic Party. It's like this is a total embarrassment, and we're trying to solve this, and we're asking pretty please for them to do something else.
mm-hmm. Yeah, this is exhausting. Okay, I don't think I have any more angles on this unless you do.
No.
Okay. Well, in that case, I think it's probably time to give the wrap up. So Corbin, any place you'd like to send people within reason and within budget?
I haven't made anything recently. I have I'm going to hopefully record a Tech Tales this weekend. That'll be the first Tech Tales in 4 months, probably. It's been a long 4 months. Uh,
They're all
so
long lately.
that's why it's been a break. In terms of personal projects, I'll put this in the YouTube chat. I did finish a months long on and off effort to fix up privacy and security stuff in all my projects. So everything I make has a clean privacy policy now, and I removed some things that were maybe iffy on privacy. Um, and with this out of the way, I can actually do more cool software stuff. Like next thing I'm gonna work on is like big interface overhaul for Link Cleaner, because Link Cleaner is pretty popular now. And the interface for it is still like the very basic like design for phones thing that gets stretched out, because it was originally like mostly for phones, because trying to like remove tracking variables on links on my phone makes me want to die. So that's what that web app was made for initially. So I'm gonna start experimenting with some different layouts there, but yeah, so look forward to that. Yeah, because Link Cleaner is the funny thing about Link Cleaner is that I accidentally did very good SEO on it. Not because it's like, got a lot of like pages with, long text guides that are capturing keywords. It's just, it turns out a lot of people Google for Link Cleaner specifically and URL Cleaner. And on those, the site is now like in the top results. So I think if I check in the last 28 days, Link Cleaner has had 8.5K visitors, and 6.4K. Oh, I'm sorry, 17K links cleaned in the last 28 days. So I feel compelled to provide a good user experience for all those fine folks, and also me, because I use this a lot myself, and people at my company. So, not my company, the company I work at. I don't own Valnet.
Oh, that's good, because I've heard that some very negative articles have been written about the owner.
No comment.
I mean, just what I've heard. Anyway, so with that, I myself will be back this weekend with some Overwatch, maybe some Marvel Rivals, given that Overwatch, the big update just hit. I will probably be burning a lot of time trying to grind through some stadium play. We'll see how that goes, because I'm probably very foolishly going to try to make that accomplishment, or make the achievement where you win a round with every single hero, which feels like a really, really daunting and probably unlikely task, but we'll see how it goes, considering I don't even play some of those heroes. Anyway, so and then of course we will be back next week with another RambleCast. That should be Wednesday as usual. And I don't know, you get the idea. Of course, if you'd like to support the channel, what we do, what we say, there are links down below to Cash App, Streamlabs, and Patreon. And of course, huge thanks to supporters of the channel: Kirby Mermaid, Austin, Carson, David, and Diablo. Y'all are awesome. And with that, we will all be back soon enough. In the meantime, hope you all have an excellent week, and good night, everybody.
Bye.